IU geography professor John Baton was curious, what was Bloomington like 100 years ago? In this week's edition of City Limits, Mitch Legan details Baton's Reconstructing Bloomington project, which gives residents and researchers the clearest picture of historic Bloomington to date.
We'll go back to the Cornet houses again, and this is just because I talk about...
As the director of IU Geography's Historical Landscapes Lab, John Baton spends a lot of time working with maps. He was teaching a new class this spring on digital mapping and needed to come up with a final project. But he didn't want to assign something that would end up in a filing cabinet or recycling bin.
It's important for me to be doing research that is locally focused, as well as research that's going to be, potentially reaching people outside of the ivory towers, or I guess we should say the limestone towers at IU.
So Baton commissioned what's become his Reconstructing Bloomington project. He and 19 of his students used historic fire insurance maps and a city directory from 1907 to create an interactive digital map that provides previously unseen insights into turn-of-the-century Bloomington.
So the remarkable thing to me is, looking at the buildings by themselves, you can see that all the stuff that isn't here anymore. One of the things I talk about in this is how many grocery stores there used to be in Bloomington, something like 20 plus in downtown.
The result is a picture of a manufacturing town where sawmills and metal foundries were peppered among single and multifamily residences. Industrial corridors have become parks, and churches were more abundant than today.
And if we walk a little bit further, we're going to start going by some dwellings, right? So we have a single-story dwelling located probably right where this tree is, right? And so where somebody once lived, right, and somebody once made their life, raised a family, today there's no sign of this thing ever actually existing.
The project is the first of its kind in Bloomington. It'll streamline the process for researchers like Megan McDonald, who often has to rummage through years of maps and directories for her work at the History Center.
You don't have to run back and forth between all these resources, get a file out on barbershops, get the maps out, get the directories out. It's all in one place.
The digitized information will help put current events in perspective. For example, looking through the map, Baton discovered Bloomington's core neighborhoods weren't necessarily the havens of single-family homes we've heard about.
Some of these very small houses had anywhere from 7 to 8 different adults living in them, all with different last names, right? And so if we're talking about preserving core neighborhoods and the integrity of core neighborhoods, it's important to understand the historical context of what these core neighborhoods were like in the past, right?
The class will update the project this semester using maps and census data from 1900. As it continues, additional years would provide layers of data, allowing researchers to track changes as the city modernized.
So we don't just understand how the physical landscape of Bloomington looked, like the buildings and the streets and things like that, but how the social landscape looked as well.
In his perfect world, Baton would love to add the option for anyone to contribute and add their own historical photos or stories.
There can be this whole kind of really cool exploration into individuals as well as a community as a whole. And I'm really hoping that this is something that the community at large can explore and learn something from.
He says available information make it logical for the next year to be 1913, though continuing the project is dependent on class enrollment. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Mitch Legan.